Hi, Seth. Thank you so much for joining us today to share a little bit about insurance and home ownership.
Well, Carolina, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Would you please share a little bit about what you do and how you can be helpful to a new home buyer?
Sure. So if someone is purchasing a co-op or a condo, for example, right here in New York, um, a typical co-op or condo policy covers you a couple of ways. First off, if you think about the apartment before you move in, what's there? The walls, the floors, the kitchen cabinets, the bathroom fixtures, the lighting, all of this would be covered on the co-op or condo policy in case of a fire or water damage. The next part of a typical policy that you'd be purchasing would be contents or personal property coverage. Everything you're going to bring into the apartment, clothing, furniture, pictures on the walls, electronics, all of that would be covered in the apartment in case, again, of a fire, water damage, or even theft. The third part of a typical policy is what is known as liability insurance, and that protects you a couple of ways. First off, someone walked into the building or into the hallway into your apartment, slip and fall and break their leg, somehow decides it's your fault and turns around and sues you. The insurance would protect you and cover you for the legal costs and everything associated with the lawsuit. Another way that liability piece of the insurance protects you, if you, let's say, by accident left the water running in your apartment, not only did it cause damage in your unit, it caused damage in the hallway, the apartment next door, the apartment below you, and the co-op or condo board turns around and says, Carolina, you just caused $29,000 in our building damage. Please pay. The insurance would protect you from this type of damage as well. So it also comes with something called credit card fraud, ID fraud, even something called off-premises theft, which means if you had a laptop computer with you away from home and that laptop were to be stolen, you'd still be covered. So that's what's typical about a co-op or condo policy here in New York.
Wow. So it sounds like a co-op or condo policy would cover you just like a renter insurance, except that it also covers your own property.
That's correct, because that unit itself, you own it, right? So that would be an addition to a typical renter's policy, correct?
Okay. Now, in the case of a townhome, let's say in Brooklyn, I'm assuming it's pretty much the same.
Yes. So if it's a home where you are buying the entire structure, like a townhome, for example, the other piece of the policy is you'd be covered for the entire structure, plus all the systems. Okay, so think about that. So now the policy gives you more coverage in case, say, a tree fell on your roof. Now you had to replace the roof. You'd be covered under your homeowner's policy.
Or even if a pipe burst in the middle of the winter, because it
wasn't a pipe burst in the basement, for example, and cause flooding throughout. You're covered for that as well. All the damage associated with that. That's absolutely.
Now, in a little larger scale than a residential single townhome, what about if I have a a 3-family home?
Right.
And same thing, would it cover anything having to do with the tenants in terms of liability as well?
Absolutely. So yes. So first of all, the homeowner policy, this 3-family house in your example, all the coverage would be the same to the structure itself, to your personal property. In addition, because you have tenants on the property, if something were to happen in one of the other units where there were injuries and decided, hey, I'm going to sue the landlord for what happened, you're covered for that as well. Okay. However, typically your tenant, because now you're the landlord, your tenant should have their own renter's insurance policy as a renter.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's a little bit of a complicated question, and I don't know if this is throwing you a curveball, but let's say I own a 3-family home. And then there turns out that the person on the third floor left the water running and there's a leak and it
Mhm.
runs down through both apartments. Does the renter insurance cover that? Does the owner's insurance cover that? Is
Right,
there ever a combination or do they
right.
just pass the ball to each other?
Yeah, so what you would do is you would put the claim in through the renter's policy and the landlord's homeowner policy. So the insurance companies can basically decide who has fault and where should the damage be paid by, and that's how that gets sorted out.
Now, since we're in the subject of accidentally leaving water, does it happen like on a car insurance where if you have a couple of incidents, your rate goes up?
Yes, very good point. So yes, so anytime you have a claims history, that shows up when you're getting quotes for insurance and could certainly impact the cost of insurance. It shouldn't stop you from getting insurance because you still need it. You
Yeah.
must have it. But yes, it could potentially impact the price that you would pay.
Now, what is the reasonable amounts of claims then? Like if somebody lost their computer or had their computer stolen, whichever way,
Right,
and they decided to try and get it, claim it through the insurance policy, and then
right,
there really was a leak and they really had, so
right.
when do you raise red, like when does it become a concern that a tenant needs to
Mhm.
say, hey, listen, I've already done this, like I'm gonna have to pay for this myself better
Right.
than.
Correct. So every insurance policy comes with a deductible. So what that means is, let's say, let's talk about the loss of a computer, of a laptop. Okay, the laptop, let's say to replace it is $800, just to pick a number, and your policy comes with a $500 deductible, which
Mm,
means for this claim, the insurance company will say, yes, Carolina, you showed us proof of 800. You have a $500 deductible. Here's a check for $300, the difference. There
okay.
could be a great argument to say, don't put a claim in for $300. Now it's on your record.
Mhm,
Okay?
mhm.
Because insurance companies, at the end of the day, they're going to look to make that money back.
Yeah,
So they're going to raise your rate. So for $300, it may not be worth it to
yeah,
even put a claim in. All right. But if there's several $1,000s worth of damage, whole different story. By all means, that's what you have insurance for.
yeah. Okay, that's good.
That's another conversation you can't have with the computer when you buy insurance online. And I get those calls all the time to say, hey, listen, my bicycle was stolen. I paid $900 for it. What should I do? And then we have the conversation. Listen, this is what it means. This is what it's going to cost. This is the consequence. Now this is on your record, and let's decide what's the best course of action for you. And
Mhm.
that's what we do.
Yeah, that's great. So you basically enroll people and then they just reach out to you if they have any questions.
Yes, I become their advocate, if you will, throughout the process of anything insurance related. And
Mhm.
I'll tell them, okay, I'm going to hold your hand. Here's how we're going to process this claim. Here's how we're going to make sure that you're paid for the damage and so on. And it works every time.
That's great. That's great. Is there anything that I missed to ask that you think would be important information for a home buyer to know?
I get asked a lot about bundling,
Mhm.
meaning because this is on TV commercials all day long. Hey, if I keep my home and my car with the same insurance, I'm going to save a lot of money, right? The answer is sometimes, because the cost, certain insurance companies, everybody wants to bundle for sure, but certain insurance companies, the cost of the car insurance with a particular company may be more than another company. So it doesn't always pay to bundle, but it's certainly something that should always be looked at.
Mhm.
That's probably, the best thing I can say to anyone who comes to me and says, I want to bundle everything. I know I'm going to save money. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, especially the variables must be enormous. And
Right.
oftentimes, I think you're right. I think, when you think bundling means saving, maybe it doesn't
Right.
actually.
Right.
So,
No, there are times when, I can tell you I've had clients who've come to me to get home and car insurance, and they were paying like $3,000 a year for car insurance. And I said, before I even started the process, I said to myself, wow, they must have either a few speeding tickets on their record or a couple of accidents because they're paying a lot of money.
mhm.
Sure enough, they were just paying a lot of money with a clean record. So I
Wow.
was able they went from 3,000 a year to 2,000 a year. I mean,
Wow.
$1,000 savings with the same or better coverage is a good reason to switch. So
Yeah,
there are times when absolutely you should be shopping, looking to bundle, and taking advantage of discounts. Clearly,
that's great. Seth, thank you so much for sharing all this great information. This has been very insightful. Um, so I appreciate you being here. How can we reach you?
easiest to reach me through my office phone number, my cell phone, my email address. All the information is on my website, www.hochmaninsurance.com, and I'm always available.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Carolina.